Hi everyone. So I wanted to come on today and I wanted to do a brief demonstration on cord cuttings. Cord cuttings are a fire ritual that utilizes candles and a piece of string that you are tying to the wicks, and you're intending to sever the energetic connections that you have with somebody who is not adding to your life. Most commonly, this is a ritual that is done between you and an ex who is negatively impacting your life even after the breakup. This could be you find yourself constantly being drawn back to them, or you feel emotionally or mentally upset because just at the thought of them, or you're seeing that they're moving on and you're feeling kind of trapped. These are perfect examples of where a cord cutting ritual could be beneficial to you. I wanted to come on and do this demonstration because it really isn't very complicated when you look at just the basics of what it is necessary to conduct the ritual. However, depending on how much knowledge you have and how comfortable you are implementing your own spiritual understandings or things that you feel are beneficial during the ceremony, these can be extremely elaborate. But sometimes too, we may feel like, well, I see I could benefit from that, but I don't know who to go to have a cord cutting ritual done for me. The thing is, there are several resources that you can go to. YouTube is great. There are lots of people who do this sort of thing. And everybody does them a little bit differently because each ritual is unique to the person conducting them and in comparison to the people that they are looking to sever ties from. It's not complicated. You are perfectly capable of being able to do it for yourself if you feel comfortable trying it. There's no right or wrong way to do it. It's just looking at the basics. You have 2 candles, you have a piece of string, and you got something to light it, and then you're just safe about it because, fire and such. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you from beginning to end how you can do this very simple, very basic, and it's actually going to be just sort of a generic ritual. So what I am going to do is we're going to intend for this cord cutting ritual to be for anybody who is resonating that they're having a hard time with a particular person's energy being in their life. We're going to sever that energetic tie, and we're going to take our own energy back, and we're going to give their energy back to them. So if this is something that resonates for you, this is something that you are going to have benefit from now as I'm showing you. And it's just going to be a very open and versatile ritual that Spirit knows we are going to intend to anybody who would like to receive this for themselves. They are more than welcome to, and Spirit will make sure that you are receiving that energy. Okay, so what we're going to do is I have tea lights because, they don't take very long to burn. When you are choosing your candles, it's important to consider whether or not you intend to sit and watch the candles burn, or if you intend to sort of keep an eye on them, watch them for a little bit, and then let them do their thing. Ultimately, you want them to burn out completely on their own. You don't want to, well, some may say, yeah, once the string is severed, you can blow the candles out. I don't find the significance in doing that because the powerful magic that's happening because of the cord cutting, it continues. And because I'm also going to show you how to use the interpretations of how the flame is acting, how the wax is acting, how the string burns, how the wick burns. There are so many different symbolic information that can be taken from the ritual. And that's where I find it really fascinating, because as many times as I've done cord cutting rituals for myself and for other people, how all of the ritual behaves really speaks to how open or resistant each person is to the cord cutting, and how turbulent or how hard of a time they may have later on. As past the ritual, there's still that sort of undoing process where your nervous system, your higher self, is adjusting to no longer having these energetic connections to this person who's not helping to serve your best and highest good. So we'll go into that a little more deeply as we get moving. So first, I'm going to take our candles, and in one of the candles, you're going to carve your name. For the sake of this one, I'm just going to say you. And you can write as much as you want on it. You can write different intentions on the candle. It is entirely up to you if you're going to use taller candles or wider candles, because you can use the votives, the little votives. You can use the tall emergency candles. You can use the tall stick candles. It just depends on what you feel called to do. I know for me, I take into consideration the person that I may be trying to sever an energetic tie. How long have I known them for? And that I can kind of gauge, well, I've known them for most of my life, so I'll use a taller candle. Or I've only known them for a short period of time and they've just had a really big impact, so I'm going to use a shorter, sort of wider candle, sort of fat candle. You can use like normal scented candles. I don't see why you wouldn't be able to use that. But for me, for the sake of seeing what information comes forward with the flames and how the wax works, I like it when I can watch the wax run, because there's a lot to be said about how the wax acts once it's released from the candle. Entirely up to you. If it resonates with you, if it feels nice to have, I have this candle that I'm going to do a cord cutting with, and I'm just going to let both candles burn all the way out and just let them be. Because then there's also the safety factor. If you know it's in like a glass votive, then you're less likely to have to worry that it's going to catch something on fire. And also too, you have a lot of aromatherapy going along with that to help with the grounding. And then every time you smell that, you're going to have this recognition, oh, this is the release. This is the letting go of that which no longer serves me and the best and highest good of my own life. Ooh, thanks for that. That was channeled in. That was not something that I had really thought of. So thank you, Spirit, for that. Okay, so we have a candle that is going to represent you. And then the other candle, this is where you're going to carve in the other person's name, but for the sake of ours, we're just going to write unsupportive. Unsupportive. Okay. All right, so once we have our names and our symbols and whatever else we want to add to our candles, once we have them carved, they are all set. So I'm going to set them here. Hopefully the camera is close enough that as we're watching it, you all can see how the flame is reacting, and you can, because of the angle also, not just the distance, you should be able to see some of how the wax is responding as well. So then string. Now you're going to need string. I highly recommend using some sort of a twine or even an embroidery thread. Those work great. You can use yarn. Just be mindful that any yarns that have a plastic base, they may burn, and when they burn, they may, it may scald things. You definitely want to make sure, like I just have my desk here, so I'm not worried about this, and it's because it's the little tea lights with the little tin votives. I'm not worried about my space. However, if you're using like glass candle holders and you're using unwrapped candles, like just candlesticks, that wax is going to run, and you want to make sure you're putting something underneath of it that it's going to protect whatever you have it sitting on. So, baking sheets are always nice because you have a large space that you can decorate the altar, because ultimately we're creating an altar, that you can decorate it, you can add crystals, and you can add a variety of things to that altar to help support all of it. So what we'll do is just take a little string, you just make a little loop with it, and slip it over and tighten it down. If I can get a hold of it. And it doesn't have to be super tight, it doesn't have to be taut, it just has to be on the wick. You want to try to push it all the way to the bottom of the wick where it meets the wax, so that when you go to light the wick catches, because if the string is sitting too high, it'll take it a minute for you to light it. You want to make sure that it's gonna take as easily as possible. So then, before you light the candles, you want to set some intentions. So you can say something really fancy, you can say a prayer. I have spells and just poems ultimately that I use when I'm doing rituals. But if you're not a poetry person, if you don't have spells, or you don't know spells, or you just don't feel comfortable using them, use prayers. You can use a prayer. You can call in whatever angels or guides or spirits or deities that you believe will help embrace and empower and amplify the process of the cord cutting. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we are stating that this is for the best and highest good of all involved. So this is for your most divine and sacred self and the growth and peace and love that you have a birthright to. And this is also for the other person to have awareness and to be able to grow from this as well. We never want to do cord cuttings that have a sort of background intention that I just don't want to deal with this person anymore. I don't like this person. I hate this person. We never want to hold malicious intent behind our cord cuttings. We always want to do the cord cuttings from a space of, I need to do what's best for me. And even if they're not being very accepting of what I need in this, I wish them the best. I hope they figure it out, but I also acknowledge that I don't have to be a part of that. That I do not have to share in the misery that they're having, that they're holding for themselves and then projecting out onto me. So, of the greatest good of all, with peace, love, light, and intention, I conduct this cord cutting with the support of any and all beings, deities, angels, guides that would like to participate and support. I call back my energy from this person. I'm calling back the pieces of me that I am missing because I have left them with this person. And simultaneously, I am bringing forward all of the parts of the other person that I have kept a hold of, and I'm sending all of their energy back to them with love and consciousness attached. That you are intending and aware that you are calling back your energy and you're sending their energy back to them. What's theirs is theirs, and what's yours is yours. This is where we're cutting the cords. So once you have set your intentions, then you can light the wicks. When you start your ritual, you always want to start with your candle. You always light your candle first. And the reason we do this is because you are the one initiating this cord cutting. By lighting the other person's candle first, you are giving an energetic implication that this cord cutting is going to be dictated by their willingness to participate. We don't want to do that. We're initiating it, and that's how it needs to be. So now we're just going to kind of watch. And ours is burning really fat. It's starting to consume the string. The other person's candle is kind of burning a little softer, but the candle, the string is like smoldering. And it's gradually, all of the flame is gradually moving inward to meet. And the person that we're cord cutting from, their flame is moving a lot faster across, and it officially detached. So that's a really interesting reaction, because even though you initiated it, there was sort of this resistance. Our flame never went past the edge of our candle, which means we sort of had our boundary, and their energy, their flame started traveling along. So perhaps this is the other person was projecting a lot of energy toward you, and you set up your boundary and you weren't going to let it get to you anymore, and now the tie is destroyed. It's a really beautiful thing. You set your boundary, and it's important that we set our boundary. Now, these ties right along the edges, you can see that they're still sort of burning. So there's still this sort of awareness, like, yep, you're there, I'm here. And there's still this working through things. And you see our candle, your candle, the wick itself has a really strong flame. And even though there's a little bit of burning on the edge of the string that's remained, that's just the continuation of this energetic connection being severed. This is your awareness accepting that this was a thing and that you're working through it. Now, let's take a look at the other person's. It may be a little hard to see, but here in the middle, that's where the wick is. That's the wick flame. It is so tiny. And on the other sides, that's where the string is, and those flames are massive. They are far bigger than the wick. So this, to me, would speak to the connection is severed and how they're doing as a person, how they're doing on their own. They're not doing very well. Their flame is so small. They feel so vulnerable. And so there's going to be all this projected emotion, anger, frustration, defensiveness, all these sorts of things could be happening while all of this energy work on the outside in association to this connection is burning. It's smoldering. They're stewing over it, or they're just processing through it, and it's a lot for them. So, because we never want to assume that they're just being resistant, that they're just being malicious, they're talking shit about you behind your back, or they're, spreading lies or whatever, because it may not necessarily be that. It may be they are being fully aware of how this circumstance has impacted not just you, but themselves. And they're starting to see their toxic traits. They're starting to see their limiting beliefs. They're starting to see where they have room to grow. And because it's kind of burning from both ends, it's literally burning from both ends, it's all overwhelming. And we want to hold space for them while they're working through that, because we've all been in that situation where everything sort of hits you at once and it's a lot. And you just, your flame, how you feel about yourself, how you feel about life, that flame can be really, really small. And that's a tough place to be. So we always want to offer love and understanding and compassion and hold space for them that they can figure it out, while continuing to honor that we are not necessarily needing to be a part of that journey for them. That is their journey, and we may have had a particular role in it up to a certain point, but we set our boundary and we reminded ourselves and acknowledged that that is not mine. But I'm hoping that they figure it out. I'm hoping that they work through it. I'm hoping they can feel better about things. I'm not going to take this personally. I am just acknowledging where I have influence over how I feel and how I'm going to allow this to impact me and my life. Oh, excuse me. Okay. So the wax isn't really acting very oddly. I will say that their wax is almost completely liquefied. There's only a small portion in the bottom that is still solid. So there's a lot that has happened. There's a lot that has come to light for them, that all of those sorts of things are being melted down. All of those things are being broken down. And for me, I'm seeing that this is a lot of awareness coming to them about how they have contributed to these circumstances. While your candle, it's liquid, but there's a lot more solidness toward the bottom of the candle. And because our flame is steady, see, we're still working on this energetic connection, but it's a steady burn, it's slow. This speaks to the acceptance that this is a process. It may not always happen instantaneously. This is something that we slowly have to work through so that we can come out on the other side of it. Our wick flame is very strong, and you can kind of see where it's working on stuff from the other end of the string. So there's a lot of past stuff that may be coming up that we're working through all at the same time. But we're steady. We're ready for this. There's not a lot of turbulence. And even their candle, there isn't a whole lot of turbulence. The past stuff, that flame has dwindled greatly, but the wick candle is still very small, very small. And then their big flame is from working through the energetic connection that you initiated severing right now. Yes. So for anybody who's maybe considered doing the cord cuttings for themselves and were maybe unsure of how to go about it, like I said earlier, the setup does not have to be complicated. It can be just as simple as this and your intention. Your intention is the biggest, most important part of cord cuttings. It's any magic that we conduct is always about our intentions, and we want to always seek to maintain positive, supportive, all around intention for everybody involved, not just for ourselves. You can, again, you can set up the altar however you like. I like to use crystals and herbs and salts, and I carve symbols into the candles. I'll carve all kinds of stuff into the candles, if depending on what kind of candle I'm using. And then again, I like to sit and watch how they respond, because it's just, to me, it's fascinating, especially whenever I can see the correlation between a particular person's candle and me knowing how they sort of respond to certain situations. I'm like, wow, well, their whack, one ritual that I did, there was a couple of people that was included in it, that the candle, it was a glass votive, and it was just a tall stick candle, and as it was burning, the wax was falling down the votive in different ways. Well, for a couple of the people, it only ever dripped down the back. It never dripped toward the front, where I sort of had the center of this circle was the front of the candles, the back. So to me, that wax dripping only down the back meant that they were not allowing their emotions or their responses to what was going on within the circle be seen, It was always something that they held back. It was something that they kept to themselves. And as I saw that, I was like, oh wow, that's really interesting. I can totally see where that is exactly the case. And in that moment of acknowledging and making that connection, I offered that much more understanding that they hold so much back. And holding all those things back is never supportive, because when you constantly keep all of these things buried inside you, it starts to impact us mentally, emotionally, and then physically, because our bodies don't know what to do with all that stagnant, negative, inappropriate energy. It's important to be able to release those things. So, again, like I said, in that moment, I offered that much more love and understanding that they're dealing with a lot and they're just not sure how to deal with it, and holding space that I really hope that me initiating this cord cutting is helpful to them. Cord cuttings are great because they can. How often do we sort of like get ourselves overly involved in other people's trauma and drama that we sort of like, oh man, I'm really deep into this. I really shouldn't be this far into this person's stuff. It's a lot, but you're still wanting to be helpful. Cord cuttings are good because you can separate yourself. You're energetically disconnecting from being overly involved. You are establishing a better boundary that you can talk to somebody about their stuff, but you are no longer energetically connected to it, that you are associating with it, that you can be helpful from the outside with as little, really with as little interaction. It makes it easier to be able to keep yourself from feeling overly involved and overly triggered and impacted by those things. Another thing is, some people would say that cord cuttings mean that you no longer give two shits about this person or anything that's going on with them at all. That you will no longer have any emotional reaction to anything that involves them or any sort of interaction or potential interaction. And some of this, and that may be true for some people, but for me, when it comes to the cord cuttings, it's not just about, I never want to see, think about, or have any sort of emotional response to this person ever again. It's more taking back your energy from them and giving that which is theirs back to them, that you can still appreciate them as a person. You can still acknowledge that you all had this connection for a reason. You were meant to learn something, and because it didn't work out, part of that lesson is being able to say, yeah, it was tough, but I'm not taking anything, I'm trying not to take stuff personally that happened between us, that this was just something we needed to experience together, and I hope you figure out your part of stuff because I'm working on figuring out my part of stuff. And just being able to sort of be on good terms with people after the fact, even if they did something, really awful. There has to be this forgiveness that goes into it. Forgiveness for them being hurt in such a way that they then projected that back to you. And then you forgiving yourself for, well, I put myself in this position. All the red flags were there, but I just didn't see them. I didn't want to see them. I'm naive. I'm just oblivious. It's like, no. We're going to stop right there because none of that is true. You have to forgive yourself for being in a space and making a choice that ultimately, even though it didn't work out, you still learned something from it. You still take something very, very, very valuable away from these sorts of situations. And part of that is being able to put up your boundary, say, yep, that's not for me, that's not cool, and I hope you do well. I hope you figure it out. I hope you get to be the person that I saw you could be. But what you did to me was not okay. And in time, you may acknowledge that. Whether you do or not, I don't care, because I know I deserve more than that. And I'm going to take my energy back. I'm going to be whole and full, and I'm not going to look at myself in any sort of negative light. I'm not going to beat myself up. I'm not going to make myself feel bad for choosing when, because a lot of the time, us who have, really good intentions, and we are inclined to see the good in people, even if we get little hints of, that was kind of weird, or kind of wasn't okay, but I don't want to make a big deal out of it. That is your good-hearted nature seeing the good in those people, because there is good in those people. It's just there's a lot of other stuff that you were willing and able to look past, that they have not been able to work past, and they have to be able to work past it. We can't just you can't just expect people to look past your flaws or the things that are not supportive to other people. You have to work past it. So yeah, a little more of that was channeled in. It's just kind of flowing in. So the flames are obviously getting bigger. So a little bit of time. Both of the candles now, the wax is completely liquid now. And our flame is super big. Our wick is completely enveloped with the flame, and then we are still processing and working through this energetic connection. But it is a part of our wick flame, which is awesome because we're incorporating it. We are still retaining our fire, the person that we truly are. We're still embracing and living off of that while we are working through this energetic connection, while we're continuing to transmute that. That's beautiful. There is a little bit of string on the other side that would indicate past connections to the situation and things attributed to the circumstance that led to the connection. So a lot of great growth going on there. For their candle, the string is still very like the flame is all the way across the energetic connection, the wick, and then a little bit of the back part. But the bigger part of the flame is on the energetic connection side. So there's still a lot of transmuting that's going on there. And I think it's hard to see in the video, but their candle, because of the way the string has laid and it's absorbed the wax, it's actually leaked out. It's leaked out of the little tin votive. And that to me would say that this person is, they're really expelling a lot of stuff. So if we're looking at it from a point of that they're not really taking this very well, that they're putting a lot out there that may not necessarily be true, they're being defensive, they're talking shit, they're overflowing with these emotions. Or we look at it from they are receiving it and there's weeping. Weeping is the word that I'm getting, that there's a lot going on that they are working through, and it is impacting them to the point that they're releasing it beyond this barrier, this face, this facade that they create, which that actually resonates more with me now, that feels more truth, that they are acknowledging what this is, and this barrier that the face that they have put on for the world, this transmutation is breaking that barrier. They're weeping, they're crying, they're working through all of these things, and it's coming out finally. They're not just holding it all back. And it's a very slow and steady sort of flame that they have going on there that they're working through. But it's still a pretty strong flame because they're working through all of those things. They're not just working on bits and pieces of it. Because before, the wick flame was really small, and then the flame on the past circumstances leading up to the connection was really small. At some point, they merged, and they are working through all of that. They're working through all of it. So this is wonderful. This is wonderful for them because they're starting the process, and wonderful for us because we're doing it. Look how big that flame is. That's amazing. How beautiful is that? It's kind of cool to see because it's like their wax is weeping outward, and it's underneath of the votive on the desk. The wax is like bubbling, and every once in a while I see the little votive kind of rock because it's so hot. That's really cool. Man, we are just all about ourselves, aren't we? So all of this, our flame got like super big, and it started like dancing and popping. This says to me that we are working through all of this stuff, and we feel and we are experiencing this coming out on the other side of things. That we feel so great about our journey from past, present, and moving forward. We feel really good about this connection that we chose and acknowledged that was not in our best and highest good, and we made a choice to honor ourselves and what we needed in that. We are thriving. We are thriving. And I know you all are going to be able to see it, but inside the votive, at the base of the wick, where you look in it, and it's got so hot in there that the wick base where it's glued into the little tin, it's like boiling. It's bubbling like it's boiling. That's so cool. So so this here, this is a perfect example of why we, one, fire safety, why we want to watch our candles. So being mindful of where we set up our altar, um, and how big the candles are, so we get an idea of how long they're going to burn. That even if you're not necessarily interested in seeing how everything reacts, you just, I lit it, and that's all I need to know about it. And once I realize the candles are burned out, I know that this intention is completed and sealed, and we're good, which is totally fine. I know there are plenty of times where it's just like, okay, we're done with this. It's done. I don't need to know how everybody's gonna do. I know I'll be fine. I hope they figure it out. I've set all that intention. I need to move on with my life now. It's perfectly fine. But if you are going to really just take that sort of walk away approach, just make sure that you peek in on it. Make sure it's not going to start flaming or falling over. If they're loose candles, do whatever you need to do so that you feel comfortable that the intention of the ritual is being carried out, as well as the safety of it all. Because one of the complex cord cuttings that I did for myself took hours, like at least 6 hours, by the time all of the candles burned down to a point that I felt comfortable sort of walking away from them while they just kind of fizzled out. But yeah, it can be pretty extensive. I will be interested to see which candle burns out first. Wow, look at that. The flame is like the entire votive. I don't think you can see it from that side, but on this edge, the top edge of the tin is like blackened. That's so crazy. Like, look how much work we have put in and how big our flame is. Like, we're not afraid to be messy. We don't have a lot of wax on the outside. It looks like it's just, it's stuck to the thing. So there's enough wax that it, sort of blended to the wood, that if it got that hot, it's basically just burned into my desk. So it's a good thing it's a good thing I wasn't worried about that, because that definitely would have been bad, and prime reason why we protect our surface. Yeah, we were so ready for this disconnection. We were so ready for this new chapter, and we have embraced it so powerfully. Look what you did. You did that. You did that. You should be so proud of yourself. And you should feel comforted by the fact that you did this with your best intention, your best interest first, but you also had the best interest of the other person too. So you don't have to feel guilty. You don't have to feel guilty. You don't have to feel any sort of regret that you gave up or whatever the case may be, because you had to do this. You felt all of the dis-ease, all of the misalignment for yourself, that you knew you had to make this choice for you. And you making this choice for you not only helped you, it's helping them also. And that's what it's meant to be, that we have these interactions and these connections with people, and when they don't work out, being able to graciously release. What's the little bit of advice, not really sure where exactly it came from, but it's gratefully receive and gratefully and gracefully release. Things are not meant to stay in the same way in which they came forward. So when it's time to release them, we need to do it with grace. And in the receiving, be grateful. But that the change in between time change does not mean bad. Change is inevitable. It's our perspective of that change that is good or bad. And even if that change, we decide that it's not good for us, that doesn't mean that there isn't rightness for that change happening. Oh shit, I poked it. Safety 101, don't do what I just did. Just burnt the shit out of my desk. Alright. It's too late. Well, and you know what? So I'm gonna go ahead and say this too, that this happened for a reason. There's valuable information in this as well. That don't get too caught up in working through all of it in its entirety, because it gets messy. And if you start overdoing any of this transmutation, if you start taking and over applying it or start blowing it out of proportion, what's going to happen? Well, you're going to burn yourself in more ways than one. And you're going to burn the foundation that you're standing on, and what are you going to be left with? You're going to be left with scald, char, and emptiness. So, in comparison to the other person's candle, that even that they weeped, they let stuff out of their barrier. And that barrier that they wept from actually kept the votive from charring and sizzling and everything else, because this votive got way too hot. There wasn't anything weeping out of it. It got way too hot. And so ours looks like this in an area that looks like this, while they did a little more slow and steady. And they left a much smaller space that was charred or discolored from them doing this work. So ours would have burned out first anyways. So that's fine. That doesn't really matter that I had to blow it out. I kind of had to. But yeah, So important takeaways are: make sure that you're releasing it. It's not just, I severed the tie and now I've worked through a little bit of it and now I get to go wild and out in my life. And it's not necessarily that easy. And if you resonated with this ritual up to this point, then this may be a good thing to keep in mind, that make sure that you're really taking time. You got to give yourself breaks in between doing that inner work and processing through these circumstances. You have to give yourself a chance to recuperate. It's not just keep figuring it out, keep figuring it out, and keep figuring out the next thing. Because you're basically setting yourself on fire. Let out the emotions. Let yourself feel all of the feelings. Because, like I said, we didn't weep hardly anything. So that means that we were keeping everything sort of inside. And not even just emotions, it can just be talking about it to somebody that we trust. Being able to get it out. Sharing in the progress that you feel you've made. Sharing the breakthroughs that you feel you've made. And it's like, yeah, I figured out that this was something that I was doing, and this is where this connection was made, and this is the conclusion I've come to, and I feel really good about that. Having the support to being able to say out loud those things that we're processing through gives us a sense of community. Like, we are supported by those who love us, and it allows us to continue to move forward with this stamina. But if we keep it all to ourselves, and even if we seem like we're doing well, because what did I say the entire video? That, wow, look at us, look how well we're doing. But we sort of, we went overboard. And when it did finally come out, even though I poked it, but that just means that it won't take much for that barrier, that facade that you're putting on, to be broken through, and then it's just all going to come pouring out, and there you go. So we need to be aware of what feels light and heavy for us. We need to be mindful that we need to take time to recover and recuperate from these sorts of things. This is not just a get it done and go back to my life sort of thing, especially if that doesn't actually feel like it's what you're needing to do. If you're trying to force yourself to just push past all of this work and all of this processing and reflection, then if you're rushing it, you're gypping yourself of really good, you're gypping yourself of a lot of really good reflection that you can, and conclusions that you could be drawing, that you can better process things, that you can better work through things without all of the extra turbulence and without things being overwhelming. Because then at what point did it go from, oh yeah, we're doing really well? At some point in there was, I'm doing really well, and now I don't want to slip backwards and start doing poorly again. I don't want to get off of this like awesome train that I'm on. But then it kind of took a turn and it became destructive. So be mindful of where you truly are in your journey. Be mindful of where you are in your healing. And just be mindful that at any point, what you feel is worked out so well could end up being the worst thing to continue. You see, they're still steadily burning. They're still working through their stuff. This is still the energetic connection that they had with you. the wax is almost completely burned out, so it'll probably be another half hour or so before the candle finally burns all the way out. But when it does, the cord cutting will be officially complete, and all of the information that we've been able to take from this has been invaluable. It has been precious in every way, because there's just so much. There's so much that we can learn and take from this. So thank you all for joining me. Thank you for supervising me just a little bit. And feel free to comment on the video. Feel free to reach out to me directly through any of my media outlets. I have an email, minor.perfections369@gmail.com. It's minor.perfections369@gmail. You can also reach me on Facebook and Instagram. My handles for those are at Minor Perfections. And feel free to message, email, comment on any of the topics that you feel drawn to. If you have further questions about cord cuttings, I would be more than happy to answer questions for you. And even after this little video, just if it's not you were curious as to wanting to do it for yourself, if you're still wanting assistance in having a cord cutting conducted for you, I am always open to do that. I've done several for other people as well. And it really would end up being the same sort of process that we would decide whether or not what size candles to use, or if it's something that you wanted to be more interactive with, that you wanted to watch it, you wanted to talk about it, or if you just wanted to, I just need the altar set up, and I give you the little bit of information that you need to get it going, and then you could just let it run, and you just let me know when it's done. That's cool too. This has been wonderful. I love it. I love it so much. Thank you guys again. I appreciate you hanging out with me. I appreciate your time. I hope you all have a great rest of the day.